Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's show. I'm your host, Zach Drew.
And I'm Andrew Bellers.
Today is going to be at least a two-part show. I'm going to be talking about the famine that is taking place throughout the world, and I'm also going to be discussing the famine of the Word of God as well. Most Americans right now, they are not prepared for what is coming. A crippling food shortage, sky-high inflation, possibly $20 a gallon for gas, and also possibly the greatest depression our country has ever seen. All of this on today's show. Before we start, I want to give a special thank you to Mark, to Michael, and to Dan and Mary Ann for joining the Paul Revere Club. Once again, you can join the Paul Revere Club, anybody that's watching, for a monthly donation of $30 to the ministry. Every month, we're going to send you a special news report via your email. You'll receive the shocking articles that we didn't have time to cover on the show, written commentary explaining the significance of the current events and how they align with the Word of God. Also, the newsletter will have written recaps of the show that took place during that month as well. This is all exclusive content that you can only receive as a member of the Paul Revere Club. Now, we are also going to have a section in there with all the videos and articles that I read each month that we're not even getting close to talking about on the show. Last week alone, we probably had 30 minutes of content also prepared that will never see the light of day. That is why you join the Paul Revere Club to receive the Paul Revere Report every single month. Every single person who believes in this show, I'm asking you to join this club. Go online right now, ZachDrewShow.com. ZachDrewShow.com. Once you're there, you click Store. You click the store button, and that will send you to the page where you can become a member of the Paul Revere Club. You don't want to miss what we have in that report every single month. And this is how we continue going forward. This is an incredibly difficult time in America. Americans are feeling tight financially, and that is reflected in the giving to ministries throughout the country. And I just want to encourage you, even when things are tight, make sure that the voices that you trust continue. And one of the ways you can help us continue is by joining that monthly club. All right, let's begin the show. Let's begin by reading Matthew 24, verse 6 and 7. This is the Olivet Discourse. This is what Jesus had to say when his disciples came up to him and said, "Tell us the times. Tell us what the signs of the times are going to be before you return." And he responds and he says this: "You will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not alarmed, for this must take place, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom will rise against kingdom, and there will be famines." There will be famines and earthquakes in various places. Luke 21, also from Luke's perspective, the Olivet Discourse said this: "Then he said to them, nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. There will be great earthquakes in various places, famines and pestilences, and there will be terrors and great signs from heaven." You see, the famine that the world is experiencing and about to experience, this is not a famine caused by a drought or flooding or plant diseases. It's caused by politics. It's a famine caused by the hands of men. Do you believe God can send famine on the world through politics as a judgment? I do. I really do. You see, this is a play by the global elite to accept the new liberal world order. This proxy war we are in between Ukraine and Russia is a play. And it's a play by the elite to destroy America. Listen, are you willing to suffer through a recession for the good of the liberal world order? Here's an article from Michael Snyder. It says this: "Are you willing to pay ridiculously high prices for the foreseeable future and suffer through a very serious economic downturn in order to put pressure on Vladimir Putin and Russia?" Some Americans will be willing to do that, but most would not. On Friday, we learned that the U.S. economy is heading in the wrong direction a lot quicker than most of the experts had anticipated. The Atlanta Fed's GDP in Now model is currently projecting that economic growth for the second quarter of 2022 will be negative 2.1%. U.S. GDP growth was negative during the first quarter, and U.S. GDP growth is negative again in the second quarter. That will mean that we are already in a recession right now. Provident Bank, based in New Jersey, found that 83% of respondents slashed personal spending due to soaring prices of food and gasoline, with 23% indicating that they had made drastic changes to their spending for financial survival. According to the survey results of 600 adults, 10.5% of respondents eliminated all non-essential purchases, and nearly 72% said they made at least some changes to personal travel habits. The S&P posted a more than 16% quarterly loss, its biggest one-quarter fall since March of 2020. For the first half, the broader market index dropped 20.6% for its largest first-half decline since 1970. It also tumbled into bear market territory, down more than 21% from a record high set earlier in January. On Wednesday, CNN interviewed a key economic advisor to Joe Biden named Brian Deese, and what Deese said during the interview is making headlines all over the globe. CNN anchor interviewed Deese on Thursday and cited that Director of National Intelligence Avril Haines said on Wednesday, the war between Russia and Ukraine could be a grinding struggle for years. What do you say to those families who say, listen, we can't afford to pay $4.85 a gallon for months, if not years? Deese, who was formerly the global head of sustainable investing at BlackRock, replied, what we heard from the president today was about the stakes. This is about the future of the liberal world order, and we have to stand firm. At what cost? At what cost? At the sacrifice of America. Yeah. Sacrificing America on the altar of the Ukraine and Russia conflict.
This is the Great Reset, and that little red flag statement that Brian Deese said is the indicator. This is about establishing a liberal world order. If you remember hearing about the Great Reset and you've been wondering what's happening, look around you. This is it right now.
And this is all happening when oil is around $100 a barrel, okay? And here's the thing. I want to share an article from J.P. Morgan, their analysts. And it is nothing less than shocking. And I want to first play a video back from March of this year where JP Morgan was saying then that gas prices could reach a staggering $200 a barrel by the end of 2022. Now, their analysts have changed their mind, and you are going to be shocked by this article. But first, as a reminder, let's play this video of what they said and why $100 a barrel gallon is important.
The far scarier scenario from the bank, JP Morgan, is one where disruption to Russian volumes lasts throughout the year. In that case, they say Brent oil price could exit the year at $185 a barrel, possibly $200 a barrel. So you know, our entire global economy revolves around $100 a barrel oil, okay? Everything we have, our groceries, our food, everything we do is based on $100 a barrel. That's just what all scenarios have been geared for. You don't change that overnight without extreme consequences. For instance, $140 a barrel was what it was at for the 2008 collapse. That was the last straw. You cannot hold this thing together at a sustained $140 a barrel. We're talking about $185 to $200 a barrel. And remember, the Fed said they need to stop the economy. They need to do everything they can to slow it down. In the 1970s, we had an oil disruption, and it was horrible. OPEC just stopped selling us oil, okay? Horrible. What we did in those times is almost exactly what we're doing now, except like the low-fat version, okay? We are now eating bacon fat only. And to cure that, they had to take 20% interest rates. So you borrowed something, it was 20% for your mortgage. That's how we got out of it. But remember, we had a president who was saying, cut taxes, cut regulation, just go out, build stuff, make stuff. Come on, entrepreneurs, let's go. Okay? That's what got us through that. Now we have a government saying more regulation, higher taxes, no power to the people, and shut them off with gas, shut them off at the banking sector if we disagree with them. This is a death sentence, a death sentence.
The tightness of your wallet right now is based off of the oil. And like Glenn Beck said, our entire global economy operates on a $100 barrel on oil. Now, the projections then by the JP Morgan analysts, $185 to possibly $200 a gallon. Well, guess what? Their worst case scenario has just changed. Listen to this article. JP Morgan sees stratospheric $380 oil on worst case Russia cut. That's unbelievable. Global oil prices could reach a stratospheric $380 a barrel if U.S. and European penalties prompt Russia to inflict retaliatory crude outputs cuts, JP Morgan Chase and Company analysts warn. So the group of 7 nations are hammering out a complicated mechanism to cap the price fetched by Russian oil in a bid to tighten the screws on Vladimir Putin's war machine in Ukraine. But given Moscow's robust fiscal position, the nation could afford to slash daily crude production by 5 million barrels without excessively damaging the economy. A 3 million barrel cut to daily supplies would push benchmark London crude prices to $190, while the worst case scenario, 5 million, could mean a stratospheric $380 crude.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, this is essentially saying we're putting pressure on Putin and trying to cap his oil at $60 a barrel. You can't sell it over that. And his retaliation to that is, okay, we're going to cut production and we're going to drive down the supply, drive up the demand, and kill you with inflation. And what this article is saying is Putin could reduce daily production by 3 million barrels.
And he could even reduce it by 5 million.
And that would basically be 5 million, and Russia would be okay.
Yeah, they're still okay.
Yeah, they would be able to survive with that. If he cut it by 3 million, we're at 190 a barrel. And like you heard Glenn Beck say, in 2008, $140 a barrel, that was the straw that broke the camel's back and sent us plummeting. $190 a barrel, we would be in trouble.
Real trouble.
$380 a barrel is what, $20 a gallon?
In our area of Central Illinois, it'd be just over $20 a gallon.
And that would, I mean, we're not exaggerating when we say that would be the worst depression America's ever experienced.
Yeah. And the Biden administration is is willing to go that far. It's unbelievable. But it's not at the same time. Because their goal is to destroy America, people. Their goal is to destroy America. And that is why they're saying, listen, if Russia does this, you know what? It won't hurt them economically. They'll be just fine, smooth sailing. But yeah, we'll enter into the worst depression that America has ever seen, ever. Are you willing to enter into the greatest depression America has ever seen, dying on the hill of the Ukraine crisis? Is that a hill that's worth dying upon? I'm serious. And listen, diesel fuel, we're talking about $20 gas here. In a recent Time magazine article discussing the coming diesel fuel shortage, we are told that the U.S. economy runs on diesel. This is what the article from Time magazine said. Though most consumers shake their heads at the cost of gasoline and complain about the cost of filling up their car tanks, what they really should be worried about is the price of diesel. The U.S. economy runs on diesel. It's what powers the container ships that bring goods from Asia and the trucks that collect goods from the ports and bring them to warehouses and then to your home. The farmers who grow the food you eat put diesel in their tractors to plow the fields, And the workers that bring construction equipment to build your home put diesel in their trucks. It's unbelievable. How do I know this is created by the global elite to destroy America? Because we could be drilling here for our own oil. But that's not an option. Why? Because that would save us. You see, fracking could release us from the grips of Russia and Saudi Arabia. Did you know that America is now the world leader in oil and gas reserves? America has 1.8 trillion barrels of oil thanks to fracking. And for those of you that just for a reminder, what is fracking? Okay, so you see, first you need to know America has a lot of shale stone, which is old oil in the ground that has become rocks over thousands of years. In about 15 years or so, I would say some geniuses kind of figured out how to turn that stone back into oil through a process called fracking. Now we have 1.8 trillion barrels of oil. We are more powerful and independent as a nation because of this. Did you know that that's enough oil to provide all of our energy production needs in America? For 1,000 years. Let that sink in. So the solution's on the table. We have it here at home. This administration knows it. They don't care. If you don't understand by now that they're trying to diminish America, listen, your head is in the sand. And so why does the left hate fracking? Well, honestly, it's not that they actually hate fracking. They don't care about the environment. They don't. They hate a strong America. And fracking contributes to a strong America. And there's only one thing that stands in the way of globalism and a new world order, a new liberal world order. I've said it 1 billion times, and that is a strong America. It's a strong America. Listen, and this is affecting shortages everywhere. Famine, global food shortage. UN chief warns of looming catastrophe. The world faces the prospect of a mass starvation catastrophe driven by unprecedented food shortages, UN chief Antonio Guterres warned Friday. Guterres pointed to the conflict. So why? Why is there going to be a catastrophic, unprecedented food shortage? Now understand that he's saying catastrophic, unprecedented food shortage. That is meaning that there has never been a food shortage like this in known history. So those words are important. Catastrophic, unprecedented, never a food shortage like this in known history. And why? He pointed to the conflict in Ukraine. Wow. And he also caused by climate change, the coronavirus pandemic, and inequality. Yeah. Because inequality affects food production. Okay. To produce an unprecedented global hunger crisis already affecting hundreds of millions of people. There is a real risk, he said, that multiple famines will be declared in 2022, and 2023 could be even worse. Listen, Michael Snyder said in one of his articles, and I agreed with him, he said, listen, the COVID pandemic, has played a role, played havoc with the global supply chains. And the war in Ukraine is greatly restricting the flow of agricultural resources out of one of the key bread baskets in the entire world. And that's what we're seeing. And it's all strategic. And there's crazy supply problems. Shortages throughout the world have caused rationing in developed countries already. So many people are dying in third world underdeveloped countries. But Greece, here we go. After limiting the sale of sunflower and sunflower oil online, Greek supermarkets are turning to rationing the sale of sugar as well, now including in their stores oversupply problems. Spain, another developed European country. Sporadic shortages of products like eggs, milk, and other dairy products also hit Spain since the war in Ukraine began, and major supermarkets as well. And they began rationing sunflower oil earlier this month. Now stores will temporarily be allowed to limit, quote, the number of goods that can be bought by a client, according to information in the official state gazette published on Wednesday. Italy may start rationing natural gas consumption to certain industrial giants. Germany, Russia has decided to reduce the flow of natural gas going to Germany. Europe's biggest economy, that's Germany, is now officially running short of natural gas and is escalating a crisis planned to preserve supplies as Russia turns off the taps. So understand what I'm saying. Unless God intervenes in a radical way, which he can, but he also says there will be famines in the end days. So he can intervene. But if right now is the fulfillment of those scriptures, he is backing off to allow the famines to take place. So unless something changes right now, listen to me. This is not just sensational news. You need to prepare. Because this is orchestrated by evil men, and they are succeeding. And like the UN fellow we just mentioned, he is saying catastrophic famines, unprecedented in history, are coming about in 2022 and 2023. Unless something changes, you need to get prepared. And listen, these are developed countries. People are already dying of starvation in underdeveloped countries. Michael Snyder also, he really got it this week. I'm telling you. He wrote a recent article, and he talked about how in Somalia, one deeply suffering mother, this is such a horrible story, has already lost 4 of her children to starvation this year alone. No mother should have to lose her child. She has watched 4 die this year. A drought in the Horn of Africa has taken them one by one. Now she cradles her frail and squalling 3-year-old, whom she carried on a 90-kilometer, it's 55-mile walk from her village to Somalia's capital, desperate not to lose him too. Sitting on the floor of a malnutrition treatment center filled with anxious mothers, she can barely speak about the small bodies buried back home in soil too dry for planting. That is one of the saddest things that I have read in a very long time. If reading that doesn't make you incredibly sad, you should check to see if you still have a heart. What is even more tragic is that countless others will soon starve to death in Somalia, and conditions have also greatly deteriorated in Ethiopia and Kenya. More than 200,000 people in Somalia face catastrophic hunger and starvation, a drastic increase from the 81,000 forecasted just in April. A joint statement by UN agencies said Monday, noting that a humanitarian response plan for this year is just 18% funded. Somalia isn't alone. In Ethiopia's drought-affected regions, the number of children treated for the most severe malnutrition, a tip of the crisis, jumped 27% in the first quarter of this year compared to last. Unbelievable. I've always warned that it would be the poorest parts of the globe that would be hit the hardest. We are living in the end times. This is setting us up, truly. And I don't think it's in the next few months. And everybody has different views. I think it's a lot longer than that. I think we have years left. But you got to understand the conditions of the world are setting us up for the mark of the beast, where inflation is so high that the government will offer such radical subsidies that is the only way you can purchase food if you do it through the government. Because if you don't have those government subsidies, you might be paying 5, 10, 20, 30 times the price. You will not be able to eat. Revelation 6, 5 and 6 says this. This is the third horseman, the black horse. When he opened the third seal, I heard the third living creature say, "Come and see." So I looked, and behold, a black horse. Now, black is associated throughout the Old Testament with famine. You can read about that in Lamentations 4 and Jeremiah 14 and other passages. A black horse, and he who sat on it had a pair of scales in his hand. And I heard a voice in the midst of the 4 living creatures saying, "A quart of wheat for a denarius, and 3 quarts of barley for a denarius. And do not harm the oil and the wine. A little clearer version is the NLT here. And I heard a voice from among the four living beings saying, a loaf of bread, a loaf of wheat bread, or 3 loaves of barley will cost a day's pay. And don't waste the oil and the wine. In World War II, Germany provided a parallel to what the Antichrist system of the end will be, a model, so to speak. Iran right now is providing us a model for how the mark of the beast will be implemented. So when you think of mark of the beast, I want you to think about this. Without it, you will live in total isolation, social isolation from the world, okay? No part in commerce. We understand that nobody can buy or sell without it. So these are very basic questions I'm going to ask you. You should be able to answer these in your head right now. In this scenario, when the mark of the beast is implemented, who is in control of the system? Is it big government or the people? It's very simple. It's big government. It's not the people that are in control in these times that we're talking about. What type of government will it be? Will it be left or will it be conservative? Come on, it's going to be left. What group of people? So we have big government, left big government. What group of people with left big government are most dependent on them? Who is most dependent on left big government? It's low income based families and individuals. Those will be the people, I believe, that are forced first to take part in the mark, to try and normalize it for everyone else, because without it, they cannot survive. So now, let's take a look at a couple of articles, and I'm going to explain to you how Iran is giving us that model right now. Soaring bread prices spark protests and shop fires in Iran. This is from Reuters. Soaring bread prices have triggered protests in Iran in which some shops were set on fire, prompting police to arrest scores of provocateurs. The protests were triggered by a cut in government subsidies. So the people are angry because there was a cut in government subsidies, making their food that they were already purchasing by the government subsidies more expensive. So because they were receiving less support from the government, they started burning facilities down. So it says the protests were triggered by a cut in government subsidies for imported wheat that caused price hikes as high as 300% for a variety of flour-based staples. So understand this. So who was affected in Iran? Half of the population was. Iran's official inflation rate is around 40%, and some estimate it's over 50%. And almost half of Iran's 82 million population are now below the poverty line. Half of Iran's population is below the poverty line. Half of the country, without these government subsidies, would die from starvation. The government plans to offer digital coupons in the next couple of months for limited amounts of bread at subsidized prices. The rest will be offered at market price. Other food items will be added later. This is a biometric ID. So without receiving a biometric ID in Iran, over half of the country will not be able to afford to eat. Because if they say, you know what, listen, we're not okay with this biometric ID system. Okay, well then you're going, at this next article, I believe we're going to get to it. I see 7 here. Well, okay, well if you don't want to be a part of the biometric system here in Iran, I know you can't afford it because you're of the 50% that are below it, so you have to pay market price. Market price, without the government subsidies, is 7 times the price. No one can afford that. No one can afford that. I mean, if you're paying $4 for a gallon of milk, I can't go to the store and just plan on every week spending $28, 7 times the price, right? You can't do that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And this is, so we're focusing on Iran right now, and they're going to start targeting the low-hanging fruit. Iran is a perfect place for them to do this because, like you said, half the population is impoverished. This is where you're going to start seeing some of this radical stuff rolled out because, like I said, it's the low-hanging fruit. It's easy for them to use these as testing grounds. But so everyone knows, and I think we've covered this on a show before, they're rolling out these biometric IDs in developed nations. They're rolling them out in most of Europe. They've rolled it out in Israel and Australia, in Canada. Like, this is coming to the whole world.
Yeah. And Iran, like you said, is just one step ahead by saying, okay, you got to have it so that you can eat. This is Revelation chapter 6. This is Matthew 24. Here's the other article. Iran rolls out digital bread rationing with biometric IDs. The government will offer citizens digital coupons that will allow them to access a limited amount of bread at subsidized prices, while the rest will be available at market rates. The food rationing can be enforced via Iran's biometric national identity card, which has started phasing in from 2015, and which is now issued to all new applicants and for all renewals. The card includes a smart chip and stores biometric data, including iris scans, fingerprints, and facial images, and is already being used to access a variety of government services. Many cash-strapped Iranians have come to rely on Iran's food subsidy program. For the 50% of Iran that lives below the poverty line, buying at market rates is not an option. The market prices are about 7 times higher than those of the subsidized currency. So this is not an opt-in system. It might be presented that way, which it is. It's presented, oh, you can opt in.
Right.
It might be presented that way, but this is telling the people of that country who depend on these bread subsidies, now they need to go sign up for the mark. That is where we are. Wow. Now is the time to get your house in order. This show was about the physical famine, the physical shortages. Next show is going to be about the spiritual famine of God's word. But to close this out, get your house in order. You need to, listen, if it were me, if I were you, I'd buy a freezer. I'd stock up on as much meat as you can to have that protein in your home. And also, meat is going to skyrocket like we've never seen before. You need to stock up on a ridiculous amount of canned foods that typically have about 2-year shelf life. And, you know, if you can buy the food buckets that have a 20-year shelf life, that's what you eat last. Whenever you've gone through your freezers, whenever you've gone through your canned food, that is when you dip into the long-term shelf life emergency food. You need to get your house in order. Do you have anything else to say? We have a whole other show, so we got to get going to this other show here. But hope you enjoy this show. Once again, please go to the website, ZachDrewShow.com, and join and hit store. ZachDrewShow.com, click the store button, and sign up for the Paul Revere Club. Every month, you will receive a Paul Revere report to your email. It's exclusive content that you can only receive from us via that report. It's for a donation of $30 every month, and that is how we will survive. As inflation takes place, as a lot of people's 401ks or, people that they have the retirement, it's down some 15, some 20%. Please do not forget about the ministries. Please do not forget about us. We love you guys, and we'll see you next week.